Teddy Roosevelt believed in living wildly, literally. His White House was a zoo. A pony named Algonquin, who once rode the elevator, a macaw, a one-legged rooster, a snake named Emily Spinach, a hyena, and a badger named Josiah. Roosevelt once laughed as Josiah bit through a diplomat's boot under the dinner table, declaring, "Even my badgers got more fight than half of Congress." During dinners, guests might find a ferret under the table or a parrot mimicking political gossip. One staffer reportedly had to chase a raccoon out of the cabinet room before a foreign diplomat arrived. Teddy loved the chaos. To him, animals built grit and character. The White House under Roosevelt wasn't just executive, it was explosive with life, like a presidential jungle adventure unfolding on polished marble floors. When a live raccoon was delivered to the White House as a Thanksgiving dinner suggestion in 1926, Calvin Coolidge didn't flinch. Instead, he named her Rebecca and gave her a new home. Rebecca got a collar, a leash, and a VIP pass to roam the White House grounds. She shredded furniture, climbed drapes, and had a habit of stealing shiny things from guests. Once, she even snuck into a wiring closet and chewed through cables, plunging a wing of the mansion into darkness. Coolidge adored her, often walking her like a dog or letting her perch on his lap while he read newspapers. She posed for the press and once tried to sneak off with a diplomat's shoe during a state dinner. Rebecca even had her own treehouse and was known to hijack family picnics, making off with sandwiches and hiding them under hedges like treasure. She wasn't alone either. Coolidge's menagerie included a wallaby, a bear, and a pygmy hippo named Billy. But none captured headlines quite like Rebecca, the raccoon who turned a quiet presidency into a circus of furry surprises. Abraham Lincoln wasn't just the great emancipator, he was also the unexpected host of a small barnyard in the White House. His sons, Tad and Willie, were full of energy and mischief, and their two goats, Nanny and Nanko, were their partners in chaos. These goats weren't confined to the garden. They had free reign of the executive mansion. Picture velvet drapes nibbled into fringe, polished corridors turned into goat racetracks, and heads of state startled by four-legged surprise guests. Lincoln, far from being annoyed, found their antics heartwarming. During wartime strategy sessions, generals would be interrupted not by telegraphs, but by a bleeding goat nudging its way into the room. One officer reportedly tripped over a goat mid-salute, prompting Lincoln to laugh and say, "Abe's army marches on four legs too." The goats even followed the Lincoln boys onto the White House lawn, where impromptu cavalry charges took place, with Tad leading the charge on one goat while waving a stick like a saber. Visitors found the scenes both bizarre and oddly touching. A wartime president who carried the weight of a fractured nation, yet still made space for joy and play. While the war raged inside the White House, you might catch a glimpse of a goat chewing on official documents or napping under Lincoln's desk, completely unaware it was living in one of the most powerful houses in the world. In the 1830s, diplomacy was often sealed with formal letters, ceremonial gifts, or, in this case, a pair of live tiger cubs. President Martin Van Buren received this jaw-dropping gift from the Sultan of Oman, Sayyid bin Sultan, a ruler eager to strengthen ties with the young United States. Instead of sending gold, spices, or silks, the Sultan went all in. 2 Bengal tiger cubs, delivered straight to Washington. Van Buren was both fascinated and flustered. The tigers were undeniably exotic, prowling and purring with wide amber eyes. They were temporarily kept at the White House, drawing gasps from guests and confusion from staff. Just imagine it, diplomats arriving in suits, only to hear low growls from a nearby parlor. But not everyone was thrilled, declaring that wild animals, especially ones that could someday eat a senator, shouldn't live on government property. After some heated debate, the tigers were handed over to a zoo. Van Buren was reportedly annoyed, insisting that the cubs had been gifted to him, not the government. But alas, even presidents have to follow orders sometimes. Still, for a brief moment, the White House had its own personal jungle, and Van Buren became the only U.S. president in history to argue with Congress over custody of 2 royal tigers. Before Hoover battled the Great Depression, he was battling something else. 2 sneaky possums treating the White House like their personal jungle gym. Way before the days of polished pet portraits and viral photo ops, Hoover brought raw, unfiltered chaos to the White House, thanks to 2 wildly unpredictable possums. Gifted during his 1928 campaign as symbols of good luck, The opossums didn't just arrive, they took over. Far from tame, these marsupials sneaked through windows, climbed on furniture, and even popped into official events. They were a media sensation, with children and adults alike following their misadventures in the press. At the dawn of the Great Depression, Hoover's economic policies drew heavy criticism. But the possums? They only drew fans. Reporters joked they had the steady nerves of professional statesmen, and their popularity at times rivaled Hoover's own. One of them, dubbed Billy Possum, was even pitched as a commercial mascot to compete with Teddy Roosevelt's iconic teddy bear. While the Billy Possum toy didn't quite spark a craze, the White House possums left a memorable paw print on history. In a time of soup lines and somber speeches, it wasn't policy that brought a smile to America. It was two rogue possums turning the nation's most powerful residents into a marsupial madhouse. During the Cold War, most US-Soviet exchanges were tense, calculated, and heavily armed. But in 1961, something unexpected crossed the Iron Curtain: a fluffy white puppy. Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev sent President John F. Kennedy a diplomatic gift, Pushinka, the daughter of Strelka, one of the first dogs to survive a spaceflight. It wasn't just a cute gesture, it was cosmic PR. Strelka had orbited Earth aboard Sputnik 5, helping pave the way for human spaceflight. So, Pushinka was basically a space celebrity's kid. Kennedy's wife Jackie was charmed. Their children, Caroline and John Jr., adored Pushinka. But the CIA, they were suspicious. The dog was quietly inspected for bugs, literal, not fleas, to make sure she wasn't a furry Soviet spy. She passed the sniff test. Pushinka soon found love in the rose garden with JFK's Welsh terrier Charlie. The two produced 4 puppies, nicknamed the Pupniks in the press. Their names? Butterfly, Streaker, Blackie, and White Tips. 2 were gifted to children across the country, while the other 2 stayed at the Kennedy home in Massachusetts. Pushinka wasn't just a pet. She was a soft power symbol. In a world teetering on nuclear war, she was a reminder that even sworn enemies could find common ground. In a dog park. Today, Pushinka's story lives on in presidential libraries and Cold War lore. Yes, you heard that right. An alligator. Adams received it from the Marquis de Lafayette and housed it in a White House bathtub. He famously offered guests a chance to freshen up, leading them directly into the reptilian surprise. Adams, known for his dry wit, often stood outside the bathroom listening with amusement as dignitaries encountered the gator. The alligator stayed for months, quietly soaking in warm water while Washington buzzed with rumors of the president's exotic house guest. It wasn't just a prank. It became part of Adams' legend, an early example of presidential flair for the theatrical, not your average bathroom pet. Andrew Jackson, the fiery war hero and 7th U.S. president, owned a parrot named Polly, who didn't just talk, she swore like a sailor. And yes, Jackson himself reportedly taught her the most colorful parts of his vocabulary. Polly strutted around the Hermitage, belting out insults and profanity with stunning accuracy, shocking visitors and amusing staff. But Polly's claim to fame? Jackson's funeral. As solemn mourners gathered to pay their respects, Polly was perched nearby and promptly began squawking a stream of profanity, so disruptive that the clergy had to remove her from the service. One attendee wrote it was as if Jackson's spirit had descended into the bird for one final outburst. Polly became something of a folk legend. Visitors claimed she could mimic Jackson's exact tone and favorite insults, especially when former cabinet members visited. Rumor had it she once shouted, "Tell Congress to go to hell," during a dinner party. Years after Jackson's death, Polly remained a local celebrity at the Hermitage, remembered not just as a pet, but as a symbol of her master's fiery temper and unapologetic personality. If Jackson was the people's general, Polly was his winged, cussing echo, impossible to forget and utterly unfiltered.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor?
William Henry Harrison gave the longest inauguration speech ever, nearly 2 hours, in the freezing cold, and died of pneumonia 31 days later. John Quincy Adams used to skinny dip in the Potomac River at 5 a.m. A female journalist once sat on his clothes until he agreed to an interview. Thomas Jefferson invented a swivel chair and sent mammoth bones to France just to prove America had big animals. Lyndon B. Johnson had a habit of giving press interviews while on the toilet. Door open, no shame. And Teddy Roosevelt? He was shot mid-speech and kept talking for 84 minutes with a bullet in his chest.